So I'm going to do a quick serger demonstration. Sergers scare a lot of people. They're not as intimidating as most people think, and they will make your clothing last for a very, very long time through many, many washes. Yes, it has 4 threads. If you have it threaded up, don't unthread it. If it ever does become unthreaded, you have to unthread all 4 threads before you try rethreading it. Always start with this spool right here. We call this 1. It's one of the lower threads. It's the one that's closest to the post for the lower thread. And you go to the outer side of the lower thread, and then you continue on to the outside of the first needle and then the second needle. So it'd be A, B, C, D. That is the order you thread in. If you thread in any other order, your machine will get messed up. Okay? Most sergers have a threading diagram down here. Please follow it. It makes your life so much easier. Like any other sewing machine, it has pieces that can come off, and if you take these pieces off, sometimes it will help you thread your machine. And like any other sewing machine, you have to keep it clear of dust and debris and everything else like that, and have it serviced every once in a while for it to work, well for you. Lots of sergers can do lots of things. The only thing I really use it for is overlocking the edge to prevent fraying. You can use fray check, works okay, but it washes out. Pinking shears work okay, but eventually it still frays. So we want to be able to, check our material and everything else like that. You'll have to deal with 4 tension knobs on the serger. Each one does, work something different. These 2 are for the needles, and they will work out, on the edge of your fabric. And these 2 are for the overlock stitches, which you need to adjust just in case it's going over too far. So we have a nice piece of linen here, and we're going to start. When you start with the serger, you don't have to lift the foot up and down or anything else like that. The feed dogs will take the material right from you. This edge of your feed plate is where you want to mark your edge. That's where the blade that's going to come up and down is going to cut the material. Now, it's not like an actual blade. You really can't cut your finger on it. It'd be very difficult. But again, and all you do is you just kind of hold your material there, line it up on the edge, and then press your pedal. And you see, all I'm doing with my hands is guiding the fabric through. You can see it's cutting off a small section. I've actually cut off a little bit more than I normally do. Here's about 1/8 of an inch. Normally you want to cut off as little as possible. So I just adjusted my edge there. Now, once you cut, you can actually just let the machine take the edge of the thread, and it will cut it off for you. Now, looking at my serger edge here, it looks pretty good. My tension along my needle seems good because my material's not bunching up or stretching, so that's good. My overlocks seem a little bit loose. So I'm going to up the tension on my overlocks. Now the overlocks are these loops that come up over the edge of the thread of the material, and you can see they're not riding right along the edge of the fabric. They're a little bit over the edge, and so you can adjust your overlocks to shrink them down some. There are stitch length guides, and I almost never use those. I keep everything else pretty much in the end position to help everything out. So let's try this next edge, and I'm going to feed a corner here. Feed this corner here, and I'm just going to go. And you can see it just cuts off the extra thread, cuts off the excess material, and we keep going. I'm going to stop and check my overlocks. They're looking much better now. So I'm going to keep that tension right where it's at. In general, You want to serge a piece of scrap fabric first just to make sure all your tensions are set at the right for that particular piece of fabric. Different fabrics require different tensions, and if you got too much tension or too little tension, it can screw you up. Now I'm going to turn a corner here. You notice I haven't cut my thread off. Okay, I'm just going to line my corner up. I'm going to let the machine cut the thread off. Now I'm coming to a curve here. You can see this part of the fabric has an inside curve to it. What we want to do when we do an inside curve is basically just kind of pull it into a straight line. As long as what goes underneath the foot is flat, you're fine. So you may have a bunch of material bunched up over here, but you'll watch as I sew, I'm just going to pull this into a straight line. So I'm in the depth of the curve here. You can see the material's all bunching up over here, and I've got my material, and I'm just making sure it runs along that edge of the feed plate. You can slow down at this part if you want, and again, I'm just trying to make sure no folds go underneath the foot. See, it just did a nice little curve there, and it didn't affect the curve at all when I pulled it straight. Now we're going to do an outside curve. Okay, you can see this curve, is more of an outside curve, something you would see on a cap of a sleeve or something like that. You can also see this corner is a little sharper than a 90 degree. Doesn't really matter. And you just kind of, again, you just make sure the edge of your fabric. So this one, I'm actually going to have to guide the edge of the fabric around to make sure it hits the edge of that feed plate. And again, I'm kind of pulling it a little bit, tugging at it, but I'm letting the machine do all the work of pulling the fabric through. Okay? Again, you can adjust your speed by going a little slower. Generally, you don't want to serge more than a couple layers of fabric, so I usually only serge one layer of fabric at a time. You can construct on a serger, but if you make a mistake, you're kind of screwed. I don't suggest it. I have seen people who do it, and I've done it myself. I prefer to construct on a machine and just overlock my edges on the serger. Now this one, we have an inside corner. So we're coming up, and we're going to have a sharp, almost 90 degree corner on the inside. And I'll show you how we deal with that. So first we got to get our edge started here. So again, you can see I've got a 90 degree. Now I could try to go up there and then rotate my fabric and everything else like that. It's much easier just again to turn it into a straight line. And the overlocks will miss a little bit, but not much. Coming up to the edge of my fabric, I got a lot of excess thread here. I'm just going to hold that off to the side so that it gets cut by the machine. You can see that 90 degree angle came out pretty good there. My curve came out really nice up top, my inside curve, and then of course all my straight lines are easy. Now you're going to have these loops on the end. I usually just snip them off. Other people will tie them in and try to lace them through. I just snip them off. I never have any issues just snipping them off. You'll have a bunch of little extra thread. Serger uses a lot of thread. You cannot use small spools of thread with serger. Get these giant cones of thread and keep an eye on it. When you see like this thread is starting to come down some, when it gets down to a point where it's about to run out, what I will actually do is tie this thread to my new spool thread and then lift the feed plate and pull the threads through. Okay, using, so there's zero tension on the threads because the feed plate's up. I can pull that through, and then, I won't have to worry about, threading the machine. Just tie the two pieces of thread together and pull it through. Okay? Always set your serger back to N, neutral position, or, So you'll come at it with a different piece of fabric. You can start fresh. That's pretty much it. These handy dandy cash baskets are nice because all your scraps go in there. Otherwise, you can just leave a garbage can at the base and pretty much let everything fall in there. It does produce a lot of scrap. You can see all the fun stuff that's on the inside. Other than that, sergers are not as scary as people make them out to be. Just, yeah, go for it, have fun, take a piece of scrap fabric and play with it for a little while. You'll get used to it. And then once you get used to it, it's like magic. So, all right, that's pretty much it.